when we find a bad guy, we don't let him not be a bad guy. And if
Yeah.
that guy's desperate to be a good guy, we don't, it's really tough to get out of that thing. So again, this sorting process of someone who's worked extra state, and I'm not saying illegally, I'm saying outside of the state, even if they want to be a good guy, if someone is hell bent on them being bad, I don't know how you reliably recover that person unless you have an agent like a Pete, like
Yeah.
a Will, like a Rich.
Yeah. Well, because it's not just speaking truth to power, but it's making the observations that can then get turned into data that can be analyzed to say, look, this is not a bad guy, or I should say, is not as bad as you're making him out to be, right? Because look, for Zarif to govern, for Zarif to do the physical act of governing, he had to know the Taliban. He knew the Taliban's ways. And by the way, for him to govern also meant he was keeping people in his community alive.
Right.
He was working in a way that prevented bombs, that prevented bullets, you know? So, of course, is he Taliban? Is he a Taliban sympathizer? Or maybe he just understands his people, you know, and he understands what's needed to govern
Right.
in what the area of Afghanistan we're talking about is one of the most rural areas, not just in Afghanistan, but on the planet. It is
Yeah.
not easy to govern. It's not easy to walk around there, you know. But yet there are people that are living there longer than our country has been a country,
Yeah.
and they're just waiting for us to leave. Of course he knows the Taliban, right? Of
Yeah.
course he probably has lunch with them, you know. But here's the other thing. In Ukraine, if you wanted to do business, I'm sure everybody had to know Putin, you know. Putin is, by many accounts, probably the most wealthy person in the world, because we don't even know how much he owns or controls, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So if you're going to do business in Ukraine at the fall of the Soviet Union, you had to work through some leaders. Putin shows up, and as I see it, you know, it's just, hey, let's elevate organized crime into the government and run this place. So Putin's always going to get his cut. So if you're going to do business, everybody's got to know Putin, you know. Jeff Bezos knows Putin. Elon Musk knows Putin, because they had to do business. They want to do business, you're going to have to know the man, you know. It's mob style governance. It's mafioso, you know, as a president, but you know, it's if we don't, and I'll go, we got to go back to step zero of our planning processes, and we got to figure out a way to account for this, you know,
Hmm.
because you can't have a Zarif on the targeting list. By the
Right.
way, you get rid of him, you're going to destabilize the whole area.
Yeah.
And you're not just going to
Yeah.
destabilize the whole area.
Yeah.
Like the Taliban are going to, like, we're going to get ourselves killed, you know?
That is such a powerful thing that you just said there. You know, that we'll say Ukrainian
Hmm.
person who comes up, you know, and was whatever, he was selling jeans or Bruce Springsteen tapes in a Russian subway, you know, or a Soviet subway. And he ends up working in Turkmenistan. He makes a deal there and he has a company there and he has a company and he builds an empire, right? And he is extra legal because that's the only way to do it, right? Because there is no state to work within.
The laws could have been unclear.
Yeah. If there,
He could have been working in the gray area,
yeah, yeah,
because, you know, governments
yeah.
don't always make the best laws. They're not always transparent, you
And
know?
he's built trust. He's
Mhm.
used relationships. He's saved the day. He's been the person and he feels beholden to these people as much as they are to him. If you rip that person out, like you just mentioned, the person that comes in next, he didn't give a fuck about anybody else.
Yeah. Well, and what you might also do is you might take down a hometown hero. And now the local population doesn't like you even
Oh
more,
boy.
you know, than before,
Yeah.
and they might be even more prone
That's
to
powerful, Rich, man.
engage in corrupt acts after you've, like, look, you've taken down our guy, you know,
Hmm.
and we know it was you. You know, let's
Yeah.
say maybe it's the Department of Justice who
Yeah.
brings down a businessman or enacts sanctions against someone,
Yeah. That's
right?
the hero of Sheboygan. You just took out the hero of Sheboygan. That's not a bad guy.
Yeah.
We have a statue to that.